Hello, and welcome to a one-off recording of a curated look at some of our recent service announcements that were made during our annual reInvent conference that we held in December 2024 that are of particular interest to our Data for SaaS theme. My name is Grant, and I'm a partner solutions architect here at AWS. As you will see over the next few slides, there are a lot of things that were announced, so I encourage you to take your time to look through the entire list of announcements at the URL or QR code shown on the screen. Speaking of QR codes, on each of the announcement slides that we talk through, there'll be a QR code for you to click through that'll take you through to either the announcement, a blog, or relevant documentation link. So feel free to pause, rewind, and fast forward this video as you wish. So what is reInvent? reInvent is our annual learning conference hosted by Amazon Web Services. It's an in-person event uh, in Las Vegas, and you have access to more than 2,000 technical sessions, after hours events, networking, and so forth. It's an ideal event for people who want to transform their business, hear about the latest innovations with Amazon Web Services, and explore new technologies. So today we're going to just look at three areas: analytics, database, and storage announcements, and how they relate to SaaS or software as a service. So starting with analytics, as mentioned before, there's going to be QR codes on the bottom right of each screen. And on the bottom left of each slide, there's also going to be an indication of whether the feature or announcement has either just been announced, it's in a preview state, so it's available in a subset of our regions, or GA, meaning general availability. So starting off with Amazon S3 Access grants now integrating with Glue. So in essence, what this means for a SaaS provider is that S3 access, so the permissions, the ability to get access to S3 bucket, integrates with Glue for simple data access management. What that means is it helps to map identities from your existing identity providers, such as Okta, Entra, our own IAM service, to your S3 datasets. Permissions and abilities can cascade down to the S3 buckets. You get automatic updates of the permissions as users are added or removed from the identity provider user groups. So in essence, you should care about this because this feature will let you inherit or propagate these identity and context from your IDP down to your S3 storage level. Moving on to a managed service for Apache Flink. What we announced is a new connector to Amazon Kinesis data streams. So Flink, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's an open source unified stream and batch processing framework that was developed by the Apache Foundation, and AWS provides a managed offering of it. What it enables you to do to have in-order reads during the stream, to scale up and scale down, supports a native retry strategy if there's any issues, and allows you to consume data from a Kinesis data stream for real-time processing, as well as send your data back to Kinesis. So why should you care from a SaaS point of view? Streams processing can be quite a common methodology to move real-time data from one service to another. And the easier, the more flexible, the more connectors we can bring out, the better for you and your applications. Continuing on the Apache Flink story, and we now also deliver to Amazon SQS, or standard queue service. So what this means is that you can send process data from your Apache Flink to SQS messages. And this can help to simplify any real-time streaming data transformations. It integrates well with managed streaming for Kafka, Kinesis data streams, OpenSearch service, DynamoDB streams, and also our Amazon S3 service. Why should you care about this one? As similar to the previous slide, streams-based processing. common pattern for SaaS applications, and we're providing different flavors or different variants to allow you to move real-time data from point A to point B and process it efficiently. And finally, on the streaming side of it, in terms of performance improvements, so Kinesis data streams on-demand mode now supports stream writing performance up to 10 gigabytes per second and 20 gigabytes per second for read throughput. So in essence, better performance, better throughput is only a good thing. And it means that your streams processing isn't going to be bottlenecked by a huge volume of incoming requests. It'll be able to process them more efficiently, more performant, and in a faster way for downstream analytics, processing, machine learning, and any of the other 40 plus AWS services that, that link into our Kinesis streams. Moving on to some of our database announcements now. The Amazon Aurora DSQL. What this is, it's a serverless distributed database with active, high availability, and 4 nines single region, 5 nines multi-region availability with no single point of failure. It also provides for strongly consistent transactions and durable reads and writes. And providing all of this, it's Postgres compatible. So a lot of your tools, components, and even your developers that are familiar with Postgres language and Postgres syntax are going to be somewhat familiar with using DSQL. So why should you care about this? Any SaaS application that wants to have a relational database that has a multi-region, high availability footprint with the ability to have strongly consistent transactions could see this to be of use and benefit. In a similar vein, in the NoSQL space would be DynamoDB, which we'll come on to a bit later. But relational databases with these features, Aurora DSQL available in preview, so a lot more to come on this in future. Moving on to Aurora Postgres, so one of our two main variants of Aurora. We support Postgres and MySQL, and as you saw in the previous slide, DSQL as well. What we announced on Aurora Postgres is the Limitless offering, which is all about, in essence, a managed sharding service. So why should you care? Think of this as managed sharding solution that could be beneficial for SaaS applications that either need to scale beyond the standard RDS limits, or where they want to automatically shard at a tenant by tenant level. Currently, you would have to deal with the sharding yourself or use a third-party product, and they can introduce overheads, complexity, and heavy lifting that you would rather hand off to someone else. So what we're saying here is that the Limitless offerings around Postgres will take away all that maintenance work for you, do all that work in the background, and give you more scalability and flexibility for a sharded solution. Moving on to Aurora Serverless. So a lot of customers use Aurora Serverless to scale up and scale down to be able to handle the sudden peaks in performance demands without having to scale up their compute to satisfy these demands and waste the compute when it's not being required. But to date, on the serverless side, could only be scaled down to 0.5 ACUs, which is a Aurora capacity unit. And what that means is that for the duration of that cluster running, you would always pay for the amount of compute for the 0.5 ACU. So a minimal cost, but a cost nonetheless. So it's a very common ask from our SaaS community who use Aurora Serverless, but they say, hey, can we scale down to zero? So that if we've got ad hoc intermittent workload that we may use on a weekly and monthly basis, just on demand, that we're not having to pay for this compute that we're not actually using. So you can scale down to zero now. It'll automatically pause after a period of inactivity based on the database connections, and then resume and scale accordingly. So a great feature, and one that's going to be popular in the user community as well. Moving on to our standard relational database offerings. So with our custom silicon Graviton chipsets, we iterate on those on a fairly regular cadence. So we're now releasing our version 4 of Graviton and the appropriate instances. So these are going to be M8G and R8G instances for Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB. Some of the numbers we've seen come out from these is 40% performance improvement and a 29% price performance improvement. So why should you care? The latest Graviton chips, as I say, only get better and better as the versions change. They tend to be cheaper as the generations go on, and certainly more performant. So if you're looking for price or performance sensitive workloads, then by all means, have a look at these, experiment with them, see how they work for your particular use case and application, and you may very well be able to take advantage of some of these performance improvements or price reductions accordingly. Moving on to DynamoDB now. So we touched a bit on this previously with the DSQL offering. So DynamoDB, in a similar vein, is a NoSQL key value pair database. It's multi-region, and what we enhanced here is, in a similar way, to have multi-region strong consistency at a transaction level. So this is very useful for global applications that have strict transactional consistency requirements, such as the user profile, inventory tracking, financial transactions. And again, going back to the DSQL we spoke about previously, so this is, in essence, a similar feature set, but in the NoSQL space rather than the relational database space. MemoryDB, in a similar way, multi-region announcement. So MemoryDB, if you're not familiar with it, is a highly available multi-region in-memory database that gets you down to millisecond read and single-digit millisecond write latency. Again, it's a fully managed active-active multi-region database, 5 nines availability, compatible with Valkey and Redis. And from a SaaS point of view, it's another database offering for an in-memory solution for when milliseconds are too slow and microseconds are the new norm, or you need that extra level of performance to the microsecond range for transactions. Moving on to Elasticache now. So our latest version of Elasticache supports Valkey version 8. So again, faster scaling, more memory efficient, higher performance. What is Elasticache, you ask? And what is Valkey? So Elasticache is our in-memory store and caching service. That is a great front end in front of a vast number of database solutions where you need an intelligent caching layer. Valkey is a open source fork of Redis, which is a drop-in replacement. And what we're saying here is that AWS is supporting Valkey as a code solution within the open source community, and we're supporting the latest fork or the latest version it's out. And you can see some of the performance improvements on the screen there. So Elasticache serverless with Valkey can scale up to 5 million requests a second, and it's 5 times faster than Valkey 7.2, the previous version. Moving on to storage now. So what we What we're saying here is that Amazon S3 tables, and what this is, it's a new construct based around Apache Iceberg um, that is optimized for analytics workload. Now, why do we care about this from a software as a service offering? So, on the one hand, S3 tables allows you to perform SQL type queries across the S3 based items um, and deal with them in more of a table construct ra- rather than a standard object store. So you can run SQL queries. Um, the actual table construct can change over time. So the schema can evolve. You can have queryable snapshots, row level transactions, table level type permissions. And it also offers better performance for any analytic type workloads that you may have in the SaaS space around tenant metrics and dashboarding from either our in-house or many of the third-party query engines that we support. So, interesting feature. A lot of news and announcements to come around the Iceberg space and how that's going to be rolled out to our other services. Storage browser for S3. What this is a simple interface for object data that's stored in Amazon S3 buckets. So, whereas currently uh, within your SaaS application, you may have had to develop your own file browser or way of providing end user access to S3 storage for the ability to upload, download files and so forth, delete files. So we're providing a we're providing a browser um, construct that you can use from Amplify, React, and JavaScript client libraries that you can embed within your SaaS applications to take away some of this heavy lifting and mundane sort of work that you would otherwise have to write your code and publish it yourself. Moving on to our Elastic File System offering, which is a NFS style presentation of storage volumes to multiple EC2 or RDS instances. So again, a performance improvement. We're now saying that Elastic File System presented storage can now support up to 2.5 million IOPS per file system. So this is a 10 times increase in IOPS limits for reads, and writes go up to 500,000 IOPS per second. Potentially in use for high performance workloads, so machine learning research, certain multi-tenant SaaS workloads, and other data intensive applications where you need to share your storage volumes to multiple instances. And finally, the last one we're going to look at is AWS Lambda, which is one of our serverless compute offerings. It now supports Amazon S3 as a failed event destination for synchronous and stream event sources. So why should you care? If you have a microservice or serverless SaaS application, and you want to take advantage of our retry failure logic, or alternatively store these failures in an S3 bucket for later analysis, then rather have to code all that yourself, you can take advantage of this functionality and just have all that heavy lifting, all that mundane work done for you. So that was it for this session. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found this useful and it's either helped you to navigate through the 500 plus announcements that came out, or just gave you pointers as to where to look to get more information. If you'd like us to concentrate or deep dive on any of these topics in a future session, then by all means, please leave us your feedback. Thank you very much for your time.